Good evening, and boy do we have a big development to discuss today. To start with, this man here is Mr. John Durham. He is, of course, the special counsel who is currently prosecuting a former Clinton campaign lawyer for allegedly lying to the FBI. And because of his case, many auxiliary details are coming out in regards to what was really happening inside of the FBI, both during Trump's first run for office as well as during his actual presidency. And according to a new batch of notes that were just released 4 days ago, it turns out that once President Trump sent out a tweet saying that he knew that he was being spied on, well, the FBI began to panic internally. And before we dive into the actual content of these notes, I want to give a big shout out to two of our investigative journalists, Jeff Carlson and Hans Mankey, who did a lot of the heavy lifting and deep research for the story. If you want to actually follow them, over on Epic TV, they have their own awesome program called Truth Over News. You can find it. I'll throw a link to it down in the description box below. Now, specifically, what they uncovered was that 4 days ago, the attorneys representing Mr. Michael Sussman, who is the former Clinton campaign lawyer who allegedly lied to the FBI, and his attorneys released internal FBI documents in order to show that Mr. Michael Sussman was innocent. However, the irony of these documents, these notes that they actually released, was that for one, they do very little to exonerate Mr. Sussman. But at the same time, these notes provide quite a bit of information about what was really happening inside of the FBI back in the year 2017. So let's unpack that together. The notes that they released, you can see them up on screen for yourself, and they were written down by officials within the Department of Justice during a meeting that they were having with the leadership of the FBI. And this meeting, it took place on March 6th of 2017. And the reason that this date is so important is twofold. Because for one, it was only about a month and a half after President Trump assumed office. But secondly, and more importantly, it was only 2 days after President Trump sent out this very famous tweet. Quote, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism." Okay, so just to recap and properly set the stage for you. President Trump takes office. Then about a month and a half later, he publishes that tweet saying that he knew that the Obama administration had wiretapped Trump Tower. This then sets off alarm bells within both the FBI and the Department of Justice leadership. And so then, 2 days later, on a Monday morning, the leadership of the FBI had an emergency meeting with high-level officials at the Department of Justice. And that meeting is where these particular notes were taken. And I should reiterate that this was a high-level meeting. In attendance, you had people like Dana Boente, who was the acting U.S. Attorney General at the time. You had Andrew McCabe, who was the FBI Deputy Director. You had James Baker, who was General Counsel for the FBI, and so on and so forth, going down the list. Meaning that very likely, everyone involved took this meeting very seriously, and that's why you had such high-level brass in attendance. And so these meeting notes show that during this particular meeting, for one, President Trump's tweet, it put the FBI leadership into a panic since they were unsure of exactly how much President Trump knew about all their efforts to tie him up with Russia collusion allegations. And then secondly, the notes reveal that in response to his tweet, the FBI tried to cover up their tracks. Specifically, as soon as the meeting began, the notes showed that Andrew McCabe said that the FBI was determined to find out what was behind President Trump's tweet. Specifically, this is how the note starts, quote, "The FBI is trying to determine what is behind POTUS's tweet." Now, the irony here is that with the privilege of hindsight that we now have, it's very clear what was behind President Trump's tweet, and the FBI was behind it. However, instead of owning up to it, instead of just coming clean with the acting director of the Department of Justice about all the activities that they were conducting behind the scenes against candidate Trump and then later President Trump, what the FBI did instead was during this meeting was that they doubled down, meaning that instead of telling the Department of Justice that they were winding down their investigations or that there is nothing to these Trump-Russia allegations, what the FBI did instead was that during this meeting, they told the Department of Justice that what they knew about Trump was really bad. And we really need to look at this in its proper context, because by this point, by March 6th of 2017, when this meeting was taking place, we now know for sure that the FBI was well aware that the Alpha Bank story was fake, that none of the claims in the Steele dossier were verified. They were aware of the fact that the Clinton campaign had a plan to vilify Trump by portraying him as a puppet of Russia, and so on. They were well aware of all these details. In fact, at this point in time, the FBI had already spent 3 days interviewing a man named Igor Danchenko, who was the primary source of the Steele dossier, and he basically disavowed almost every claim in that particular document. In short, the FBI knew that all the claims of Trump-Russia collusion had, up until that point, been proven to be fake. However, instead of owning up to that, instead of admitting that the evidence was faulty and that therefore that their operations were extremely questionable to say the least, well, the FBI chose to instead double down, and they misrepresented at least 4 main points. The first one, at least according to these meeting notes, is this, quote, "We were investigating anyone who doesn't smash that like button and also anyone who does not subscribe to the Facts Matter YouTube channel." Now, I'm of course kidding about that, although I will investigate anyone that does not smash that like button and subscribe button. But actually getting back to this document, the first point within these meeting notes is that the FBI repeatedly referred to the Steele dossier as being, quote-unquote, Crown reporting, suggesting that the Steele dossier was some kind of official research document produced by the UK government rather than by some former British spy who was ultimately paid by the Clinton campaign. Then secondly, the meeting notes showed that FBI agent Peter Strzok, who was in attendance, he actually lied to the Department of Justice during this particular meeting. That's because, at least according to the meeting notes, Peter Strzok told the justice officials something that quite literally could not be true. But this story requires a bit of backstory in order to explain. You see, the official narrative that the FBI has always been keeping to is that Mr. Alexander Downer, who was the Australian ambassador in London, he had a meeting with George Papadopoulos and discovered during that meeting that Trump had some kind of connection to Russia. Mr. Downer then allegedly took that information to the FBI, who then used it to initiate their spying activities against the Trump campaign, meaning that at least in their official story, it was Mr. Alexander Downer's testimony that initiated the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation. However, during this meeting, Peter Strzok told the justice officials that it was not the meeting with Papadopoulos, but instead it was a joke that President Trump said on the campaign trail that led Mr. Alexander Downer to come forward. Here's that joke just for your reference.
That a person in our government, Katie, would delete or get rid of 33,000 emails. That gives me a big problem. After she gets a subpoena, she gets subpoenaed, and she gets rid of 33,000 emails. That gives me a problem. Now, if Russia or China or any other country has those emails, I mean, to be honest with you, I'd love to see them. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
However, the reason that we know that this cannot possibly be true was because that joke that President Trump told on the campaign trail actually happened after Mr. Alexander Downer had already initiated the Trump-Russia investigation. And so the claim that the joke was somehow the spark could not possibly be true. Thirdly, during this meeting, the FBI also lied to the justice officials about the FISA warrant that they were using to spy on Carter Page, who was a former Trump campaign official. They claimed during this meeting that their spying efforts were quote-unquote fruitful when actually their investigation had revealed nothing nefarious, which was something that the FBI was well aware of by this point. And then lastly, according to these meeting notes, the FBI appeared to try and misrepresent and even elevate the Russian Alfa Bank allegations by claiming that the Trump organization had sent a solicitation to the Alfa Bank, which was again completely false. And in fact, by this point, the FBI already knew that the Alfa Bank data that they were given was not only useless, but also even probably fake. And so what all of this adds up to is that during this meeting, all of these exculpatory facts were not just hidden from these Department of Justice officials, but also the FBI leadership. They were actually twisting those facts in order to make it appear like there was a strong case against President Trump, when they knew that there was no case at all. And so the big question is, why exactly did they do this? And the answer, it might actually be a little bit surprising, because, sorry, do you hear the sound of duct tape?
Oh, hello there, time traveler.
And welcome to the year 2023. As we call it here, month number 5 of the global food crisis. And I gotta tell you, I am on my last WHO-issued bug sandwich. And the only regret that I can really share with you is that I did not prepare for all this sooner. So don't do what I did. Prepare today by heading over to preparewithroman.com and purchasing my Patriot Supply's 3-month emergency food kit. And because your viewer of Facts Matter, you can save $150 off of each food kit that you buy. Meaning that when the global food shortage comes to you and your neighbors are forced to eat bug sandwiches, you will instead be eating my Patriot Supply's emergency food kits, which are filled with delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, as well as snacks that can keep you full and satiated for 3 full months. Now, My Patriot Supply is America's largest preparedness company, having served quite literally millions of customers across the entire country. And best of all, like I mentioned earlier, if you head on over to preparewithroman.com, you can save $150 off of each 3-month food kit that you purchase. That way you can buy one for each of your family members and save $150 on each one. And best of all, they are shipped quickly and discreetly to your doorstep in unmarked packages, so your nosy neighbors don't even have to know that you're prepping. Again, head on over to preparewithroman.com and prepare today for whatever might come tomorrow. And now again, the big question is, why exactly did the FBI play this way? Why did they hide certain exculpatory evidence while at the same time twisting the facts? And the answer might be a little bit surprising. Because again, this meeting between the FBI and the Department of Justice, it came as a direct result of this tweet by President Trump. Quote, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism." However, the ironic reality is that the FBI did not truly know how much President Trump knew regarding their actions. They did not know to what extent he was aware of all their different activities. Because as we now know, the FISA spy warrants that President Trump alluded to in that tweet were not the only thing that the FBI leadership was involved with. The FBI was also actively spying on the incoming Trump administration's transition communications. They had spied on Carter Page. They had spied on George Papadopoulos, going so far with him as to actually lure him over to London, where they tried to set him up with a sting operation that ultimately failed, and so on. But you see, coming into this meeting, they were not aware of what President Trump actually knew. And so instead of just coming clean about the reality of the evidence that they had on hand, they instead chose to double down and obfuscate the truth. At least that's what these meeting notes show. And perhaps as the Durham trial continues, and more documents are revealed, well, more and more truth will come to light and give us more details about what was really happening inside of the FBI during this tumultuous time. However, until then, if you'd like to read through this new batch of documents for yourself and go through them point by point, although I will tell you that they were written by hand and some of it is like chicken scratch. It took me close to 30 or 45 minutes just to make out what the entire document said. But if you'd like to give it a try for yourself, you can. I'll throw all those documents into the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a super quick moment, if you haven't already, to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel if you like this type of content and you would like it delivered directly into your YouTube feed every single weekday. And now, I'd like to mention that over on Epic TV, which is our awesome no censorship video platform, earlier today I published a super spicy episode that frankly there is no way I could publish here on YouTube. That particular episode had to do with a study that was conducted by researchers over in Sweden. And in that study, which was conducted on a petri dish, they found that the mRNA Pfizer vaccine injected into liver cells actually reverse transcribes itself into DNA. Now, there is a lot of nuance to that particular story. However, nuance is not really welcome here on YouTube. So if you want to check out that episode, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it and check it out because it took me a lot of research to figure out all the facts and details about how the mRNA within the vaccine is actually reverse transcribed into DNA, at least according to that study. And the results are quite interesting. Again, that link will be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it and I hope that you check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed and stay free.